Welcome to my channel, Starlight Sci-Fi. Story, thanks for watching, please like and subscribe. The first time the ancient weapon screamed, 3 alien scientists fainted. The second time the power grid of the entire moon flickered. The third time the Empire decided to call a human. The weapon floated in the center of the grand vault of Thurin Prime. It was suspended inside layered containment fields glowing with unstable blue light. Energy crawled across its surface like lightning. Trapped under glass, it was not just a weapon, it was a symbol. It had belonged to Empress Kira, the warrior ruler who had saved the Empire during the border collapse war. She died in her final battle, and the blade had cracked in her hands. Not shattered, cracked as if it refused to fully break. For 12 years the greatest alien engineers tried to repair it. They used quantum binders, molecular stitching beams, gravity forges, and memory metal reconstruction. Nothing worked. The blade rejected every repair. It overheated. It destabilized. It screamed. So now, standing at the edge of the vault, wearing simple work gloves and carrying a tool case that looked painfully ordinary, was Tobias Hale from Earth. He looked up at the floating blade and let out a slow breath. "Wells," he muttered, "you look grumpy." The alien high engineer stiffened. His tall frame shimmered faintly with bioelectric patterns under pale skin. "This is not a machine for humor, human," he said sharply. Tobias shrugged. "Everything is a machine for humor." The Empress's daughter, Crown Regent Sira, stood nearby. Her posture was perfect. Her expression was calm, but her long silver eyes never left the weapon. "You understand the importance of this task?" she asked. "Yes," Tobias said. "Everyone failed. You're desperate." Several officers bristled. Sierra tilted her head slightly. "That is direct. Humans are like that," Tobias replied. He stepped forward. The containment field hummed louder. The blade reacted instantly. Energy flared outward, slamming into the shield. Warning symbols flashed across the chamber walls. Several guards raised pulse rifles. Tobias stopped walking. "Easy," he said quietly, not to the guards, to the blade. The energy pulling along the weapon shifted, not weaker, just different. "You see that?" Tobias said softly. "It's not attacking, it's reacting." The high engineer scoffed. "It has no awareness." Tobias did not argue. He simply opened his tool case. Inside were scanners, field harmonizers, calibration rods, and an old metal wrench. The high engineer stared at it. "That device is primitive. It's sentimental," Tobias said. He activated a handheld scanner and slowly extended it toward the blade. The reading spiked wildly. "Yes," he murmured, "you're hurting." Sierra's voice was quiet. "Explain." Tobias studied the projection forming above his scanner. Energy pathways twisted inside the blade like tangled nerves. "She pushed it too far," he said. The regent's eyes sharpened. "My mother." "Yes." He expanded the holographic map. "Look here." The internal channels were rerouted manually before the last battle. Power output increased by 40% beyond safe limits. The high engineer stiffened. "Impossible. That would destroy structural cohesion." "It did," Tobias said calmly. Silence filled the vault. Sierra stepped closer. "She made that choice knowingly." "I believe so," Tobias replied. The blade pulsed again, not violently this time, almost softly. Tobias adjusted his scanner's frequency lower. "Everyone After her tried to undo that decision. He continued, you tried to restore it. To factory settings, there are no factory settings, the engineer snapped. Sure there are, Tobias said, original. Design stability. He looked up at the regent, but that's not what it became. The blade's glow dimmed slightly. Tobias took another step forward. No explosion. No shockwave. Just a hum. You reinforce the cracks, he said. Layer after layer, force stability. Over trauma. Trauma, the engineer repeated with clear disbelief. Tobias met his gaze. When humans break a bone, it heals stronger along the fracture line, but only if it heals naturally. If you keep forcing it back into the old shape, it never recovers. The high engineer crossed his arms. You are comparing an imperial relic to bone tissue. I'm comparing stress memory. Tobias said. He turned back to the blade. You locked its last moment in place. You tried to erase the overload. That killed your empress. Sierra and LT Unk and GT. Composure cracked slightly. That moment, she said quietly, won the war. I know, Tobias replied. He reached toward the containment controls. Lower the field by 2%. The engineer reacted instantly. Absolutely not. Sierra raised one hand. Do it. The field shimmered thinner. The blade flared once, then steadied. Tobias smiled faintly. There you go, he whispered. He began disabling the outer reinforcement matrix. Warning alarms lit up the walls. Containment stability dropped. Human. The engineer shouted, you are weakening it. Yes, Tobias said. Energy surged violently across the blade's fractures. Guards aimed weapons again. Sierra did not move. The weapon screamed, not electronically, emotionally. A deep resonance that vibrated in the chest. Tobias held his ground. Temporary, he said through clenched teeth. It needs to vent the forced compression. The reinforcement layer shattered into harmless light fragments. The blade went dark. Total silence. Every life form in the vault froze. Then a low hum returned, smoother, deeper, stable. The fracture lines glowed faint blue instead of chaotic white. Tobias checked his readings. He exhaled slowly. There, he said. The high engineer stared at his console in disbelief. Stability levels are increasing. Yes, Tobias said, because we stopped lying to it. Sierra stepped forward until she stood beside him. You speak as if it carries her will. Tobias looked at the weapon. I think it carries her choice. He activated a new calibration program, not to erase the cracks, but to rebalance power flow around them. You can't remove what happened, he said. Quietly, you build around it. The blade's glow deepened into a calm, powerful blue, not fragile, not unstable. Alive. Sierra extended her hand toward the field. Lower it completely, she ordered. The engineer hesitated only a moment. This time, the containment dissolved. The ancient blade floated freely in open air. No explosion came, no shock wave. Only a steady hum. Sierra grasped the hilt the moment her skin touched it. The blade ignited fully. Energy surged upward in a brilliant column of blue light that reached the vault ceiling. But it was controlled, balanced, strong. Readings across every console spiked beyond previous records. The high engineer whispered, output exceeds original design specifications. Tobias grinned. Of course it does. Sierra held the blade easily. It feels lighter, she said. It's not fighting itself anymore, Tobias replied. The regent turned toward him. You have done what our empire could not. Tobias shook his head. You just needed someone stubborn enough not to force it back into the past. The blade hummed. Agreement, but far beyond thorough and prime. Deep in silent space, something ancient felt that surge of power, and something answered. The surge of blue light from the ancient blade did not stop at the ceiling of the grand vault. It went higher through the atmosphere, into space across silent orbit, and something out there answered. The first warning came from a deep-range listening station beyond the outer defense ring. Unknown energy spike detected. The second warning came 30 seconds later. Multiple warp signatures forming at extreme distance. Inside the vault, Crown Regent Sierra still held the glowing blade when the chamber doors burst open. A fleet commander rushed in, his uniform lights flashing red. Regent, he said breathlessly. Unidentified vessels emerging from dark space. Configuration matches archived threat models. Sierra's grip tightened. Tobias looked up from his scanner. Archive threat models, he asked. The commander hesitated. Devore. The name fell heavy in the air. Tobias glanced at Sierra. She answered quietly. They were the enemy my mother defeated. We believed them extinct. Tobias looked at the still glowing blade. They weren't extinct, he said softly. They were waiting above. Thurin Prime. Space twisted. Black fractures opened in the vacuum, and from them slid massive jagged ships. Their halls were dark and uneven like broken stone fused with metal. They did not broadcast greetings. They did not issue demands. They began charging weapons. Inside the vault, alarm screamed again. Orbito. Shields powering up. Defense fleets mobilizing. Sierra turned toward the exit. Tobias, she said, you should be evacuated. He blinked. What now? This is not your war. Tobias looked at her like she had said something strange. You think I fixed that thing just to watch it get blown up? She hesitated. He stepped closer to her. You said your mother pushed it beyond limits to win. Right? Yes. Then maybe that wasn't the last time. The first wave of Orth struck the outer shield grid. The sky above the capital lit up like a second sunrise. Shock waves rippled across orbiting platforms. Defense cruisers surged forward, energy cannons blazing, but the Vorath ships did not break formation. They absorbed the damage and advanced. Sierra stood at the command balcony, overlooking the city. The blade rested in her hand, humming steadily. They came because of this, she said quietly. Yes, Tobias replied. They felt it. Reactivate. Then we have doomed ourselves. Tobias shook his head. No, you woke up something they were afraid of. Another impact shook the tower. A defense cruiser exploded in orbit. The Vara fleet began descending toward the planet. Sierra's ears lowered slightly. Our fleet cannot stop them alone. Tobias stared at the tactical display. Then he smiled. Good thing you're not alone. She looked at him. What do you mean? He pulled out a small communicator from his belt. It looked very human, very simple. He pressed a button. Nothing dramatic happened. No loud signal, just a quiet transmission into deep space. Sierra frowned. What was that? Insurance. Tobias said. Minutes passed. The Vorath ships broke through the outer defense line. Drop craft launched toward the surface. Panic spread through the lower cities. Sierra lifted the blade. If this is where we stand, she said, then we stand. Tobias stepped beside her. The Air shimmered as the blade activated. Fully blue energy roaring upward. Then, a new signal appeared on the tactical display, then another, then 50 more. The fleet commander stared at the screen. Disbelief. Multiple warp entries detected. Origin unknown. Space above Thur and Prime Tour open. Again, but these fractures were different, clean, precise. From them emerged ships unlike the jagged forms of the Vorath, smooth hulls layered, armor, bright engine trails burning. White and gold, human vessels. Dozens, then hundreds. Sierra turned slowly toward Tobias. You called them, he shrugged lightly. You told me the Vorath were extinct. I didn't believe that. You expected this attack. I hoped I was wrong, he said. But humans plan for worst case scenarios. On the command screen, the lead human ship broadcast a signal. A calm voice filled the chamber. This is Admiral Reyes of the United Earth Defense Fleet. We received the emergency activation code. Permission to assist. Tobias grinned. Permission granted, he muttered. The battle changed instantly. Human ships moved aggressively, not holding defensive lines, but cutting directly into Vorath formations. They targeted power cores instead of shields, engine joints instead of weapons. They did not fight cautiously. They fought to end it quickly. Sierra watched in shock. Your fleet, they attack without fear. Tobias shook his head. No, they attack knowing fear won't save anyone. The blade in her hand pulsed brighter as if responding to the human fleet. The Vor ships began focusing fire on the Capitol Tower. They recognized the source of the signal. The blade. Sierra stepped forward to the edge of the balcony. If they want it, she said softly, they will face it. Tobias stood beside her. The sky burned. Above, a massive Vorath warship broke through the upper defense layer, descending directly toward the tower. Its central cannon charged with dark energy. Sierra raised the blade. Tobias looked at her. Remember, he said quietly, don't force it. She nodded. Once the warship fired, a beam of black energy tore downward. At that same instant, Sarah swung the blade upward. Blue light exploded into the sky. The two energies collided above the city. For a moment, everything went silent. Then the black beam shattered. The blue surge punched through the Vorath warship's core. The massive vessel split apart in orbit, breaking into burning fragments. Cheers erupted across every channel. The remaining Vorath ships began retreating. Human vessels pursued without hesitation. Within minutes, the dark fractures in space sealed shut. Silence returned to orbit. The war was over again. Smoke drifted across the skyline. Defense fleets regrouped. Human ships held steady positions above the planet. Sierra lowered the blade slowly. Its glow softened to a steady hum. Tobias exhaled deeply. Okay, he said. Now I'm tired. Sierra looked at him. You knew they would come. I knew something would, he answered. Power like that doesn't go unnoticed. You risked our world. He met her gaze calmly. No, I trusted mine. She looked up at the human ships in orbit. They came without hesitation. Yeah, Tobias said softly. That's kind of our thing. She studied him carefully. Why, he thought for a moment. Because when someone tries to erase your history, or your pain or your fight, humans take that personally. The blade hummed quietly in agreement. Sierra stepped closer. Your species is not the strongest, she said. Nope, not the oldest. Definitely not. Yet today you stood Against extinction. Tobias smiled. Humans break, he said. But we heal stronger along the cracks. She looked at the glowing fracture lines. Along the blade, understanding filled her eyes. The Empire will remember this. She said. Tobias shrugged. Just remember one thing. What is that? Don't try to make it forget. Sierra looked at the blade one last time. I will not. Above them, human ships held silent watch beside alien cruisers. Two species, not perfect, not unbroken, but stronger for it and far beyond their system in the deep dark. No enemy waited anymore, because they had learned something simple. When you awaken an old weapon, you might also awaken humanity. The end.